some of the most important, some of the most some of the ones that stand out the most, some of the habits that stand out the most when it comes to top level players. Mixing up your options on defense, I feel like is a good place to start, bro. Like I remember exactly who I was talking to about it, but in general, like there's some people who might just sit there if you play against a Dawson player or whatever, and they just take the throw all the time. That's a lot easier to attack than actually playing against one who's sometimes gonna go for that air gale, for example, right? Like it's scary playing against someone who actually is willing to mix it up.
Of course. Yeah, you hit the nail on the head with the mixing it up, because I had a conversation with someone before, and then they're trying to make the game seem simple, you know, and they were on that line of thinking. They said, you know, in this game you should never tech.
Oh no.
And this is not a scrub per se. This is someone who plays fighting games well. They dropped that line on me, and I was like, man, you are never gonna make it in Street Fighter. I was like, you've had your day in Street Fighter 4, and you know, fighting games might not be a priority for you anymore.
Yeah,
like, you show up, you play decent, but I was like, bro, that is not how you can approach this game.
No.
That is absolutely not how it's supposed to work. So yeah, high level fighting game players, they understand that there's a level of conditioning and risk reward that's going on. I hate when people say that the knockdown situation comes down to rock paper scissors, because that's not how it works. Rock paper scissors, it's a 33% chance either way you split it, and there's no risk reward calculation. Every option is as risky or as rewarding as the other one.
That's true.
It's literally just a random guess. That's not how this defense works in this game. There's different risks for everything you're doing. There's different ways to mitigate their options, and there's conditioning, right? Like you mentioned,
exactly.
The Dawson player that takes a throw every time, that's a bad Dawson player. That's straight up a bad Dawson player, and I'm happy to play them. But the Dawson player that understands, like, I'm gonna block a few stagger strings and then mash here because I know that you built up a certain amount of distance, and now for you to go for the throw pressure, you're either gonna have to walk up here or dash, and you're gonna run into my button. So I'm gonna press crouching fierce, like a 12th frame button while you're +2. And then you get counter hit by that, and you go, what the hell are you thinking? Well, they're thinking what you're thinking. That's exactly what it is.
You'll see Infectious with Zeku wake up, stand medium kick or something like that, bro. And there's a reason behind it. There's a method to the madness, bro. There's sometimes on defense, like the way I think about it is like, even if my opponent makes the right read, I still just represented this option. So I just still introduced something or put something in their head about like what I'm willing to do on my defense. Now, sometimes I wonder what you think about this though, Brian. Let's say I'm playing against a Mika or something like that. Some rounds, and if you're a Mika player, geek or something, you might not know. I mean, you don't know when I'm going to do it and when I'm not. I might go into it and be like, okay, on the first knockdown, I'm going to jump. On the second knockdown, I'm going to block. On the third knockdown, I'm going to backdash. And I have no reason on God's green earth as to why I'm doing any of them. But the reason I'm choosing that is because I'm respecting the fact that as a geek or Mika or whatever, you have good reads or you're trying to. But I'm completely taking the risk reward and the thought process out of it. So there is no way that you can read what I'm gonna do. I want it to be more of a, since it's real, like you said, it's not RPS, but it might be more in my favor against Itabashi sometimes to make it true RPS by having no rhyme or reason behind what I'm doing.
Right. Well, that means it makes you unconditionable in that sense, right?
Yeah.
You had something already preset and you committed to it. So a lot of times the game that the grappler player is going for is to try to condition you to choose certain options. But if you refuse to be conditioned, then you've refused to be conditioned. And it's up for them to recognize that also. And that's where the mind games keep going and going. So it's definitely not RPS at the end of the day. There is guessing, of course, that's what we're discussing, but it's a lot more nuanced and even mathematical if you really want to break it down like that. So yeah, mixing up defensive options is huge. It's one of the most important things of this game, and I think that's where people really separate themselves, is how they play that defensive game. But another big one that I think is important for high-level players, or even just like mid-level players, right? I think just immediately responding to an unfamiliar situation by hitting the lab and practicing it is huge. And I think that's something that is not just like, it's not a secret, you know what I mean? It's not like a magical answer of like, oh, high-level players, it's one simple trick that high-level players don't want you to know, right? But it's as simple as, if you're in a ranked match and you see something and you're a little bit unfamiliar with what happened or unsure if you could have responded differently, there is a function in the game where it says begin training with this character when your rank set is over. You hit that button, and then you set up
it even picks the same costume that the dude that you just played had
takes
on.
the exact same costume and I believe stage. I mean, or it
and the V trigger
takes your opponent and puts them in there, and so you can visualize and remember your mindset in that moment, right?
Yeah.
But that feature is so convenient, and it's just saying, hey, practice. It's just like nudging you in that direction. And I feel like that's just such a simple thing. Every time I run into an unfamiliar situation, I just recreate it right away, and then I learn something new. And then these little things that you add to your gameplay over time, and the next time you're in that situation, might not happen today, might not happen tomorrow, might not happen next week, right? But the next time it happens, if you're prepared, you're that much better. And these small gains are what makes a great player.
Yeah, and that's facts, bro. And it's something where it's like it has to be habitual, like a whole lot of other things. Like, yeah, anyone might hear this and now go and do that for the next 2 days or something. But if you fall off after that first day, after that second day, then you're still not doing it like the top level players, man. Like when you Daigo, that's one of the main things he talks about. It's like he has to do it. Like he has to go and figure something out if he doesn't know what it is in the match. So great point you bring up there. And Brian, one of the biggest things, one of the most underrated things when it comes to habits of top level players is strategy. Having strategies. And a lot of people might think that they have strategies, or they may not have even thought about that in the first place. That's something that I think is so elusive. It's easier to make a video about or to explain teching, or what is teching, anti-airing, things like that. But strategy is so broad that it can be tough to understand. But to give you guys some, like I said, some free game for this whole year, like this entire year, one of the things that I did is, like, when I would get on Street Fighter 5 for that day, I would spend hours working on one character matchup. So I have documents that shows like my character matchups for every single character in the game with Karen. So when you see me playing in CPT, when you see me playing in Intel or Evo, any of this stuff like that, I'm knowing what I want to accomplish in this matchup. So that's not something that most players, that 99% of players are doing when they're going into matches. Even players that you may think are really good. And even when you do have a strategy, it can get deeper from there because you also need it to not be too rigid. I have a strategy, but obviously I can go up against someone using this character and they just don't play the way that, you know what I mean? Like they're not playing the matchup.
You might have to switch it up quick.
You gotta adapt on the fly, and I think that's something we can talk about later, adaptability. But for now, strategy. I think that's a huge point, Brian. Huge point.
Well, I think that's very true because I don't take as many notes as I used to. I feel like maybe I should pick that back up again. For me, my strategy is often just in my head. I like to discuss or think about matches. I don't know. For me, I do a lot of mental note taking. It's definitely one of those things where, like, when I lay in bed at night, sometimes I'll be thinking about that matchup, like, I should do this, that, and this. And that's how I approach it next time.
I think that's how soccer works too.
It's definitely like when my mind is idle or if like doing the dishes or something, that's where my mind will go. I'll just start thinking about matches.
Your dishes weren't even clean when I came over that time.
Oh, there you go. That might be where I'm too deep in thought over here. But that's it. I think another habit of high level players, you mentioned it, it's harder to talk about strategy versus the tech and everything, but I think another habit is also bare bones knowing all the mechanical interactions of a matchup. I think that's something that it sounds basic and intuitive, but I think there's a certain class of player that kind of plays by feel, and they might not know mechanically, like, this punishes this move interrupts that. At this range, I'm plus or I'm -2, but they can't reach me with X, Y, or Z buttons, so these buttons are advantageous. You need to build a collection of understanding interactions in a matchup before you can even get to that strategy level, in my opinion, right? So most players, high-level players, or like good players, kind of get stuck there, but if you're not good yet, you need to learn every single frame advantage situation. Like, do you understand how to take your turn back after those weird moves that are negative but spaced out? Birdie's a great example. I think Birdie is like that in a nutshell, right?
He's the king of that. He hits some type of button and then just stand medium punch immediately.
Right. He punishes you for not knowing the matchup because you don't know the mechanical portion of that matchup, right? He's going to do something and it's going to space him out. And at that range, can you actually hit him? You might be plus, you're able to move before him, but are you actually able to safely occupy that space with the normal? Maybe you should press a button there and take your turn back or punish him. Or maybe you do that and you slightly lift by pixel, then he presses medium punch into bullhead and does 700 damage with super cancel, right? So you need to know all those interactions. So another high level habit of high level players is they just know all this stuff and they break it down over years of practice and just going to training mode as well, recreating things, just having the knowledge. Knowledge is power. You can't build strategy until you know all the tools at your disposal.
Yeah, well said, bro. I feel like it's amazing how studious we really have to be, because I feel like when people think of gaming or fighting games and everything, it's like it's thought of in a very like just fun and casual type of way. But honestly, the reason why it's fun is because of how serious that we have to go about it to be really good at it. Like that's what makes it fun. So the next thing I bring up though, Brian, is we already alluded to it, but we didn't get into it. Adaptability, man. I really think that that's one of the top two differences. I think actually strategy and adaptability, it's not even neutral, it's not even anti-air. I think it's those two things, man. Adaptability is like, I remember hearing like Mike Tyson say, everyone has a plan until they get punched in the face. And that's some of the most honest stuff that I've heard in the world. And the best players, like you said, if they realize a brand new situation, yes, of course they'll go to the lab. But the next level of it is the fact that, or another side of it is the fact that even in a match, they are really good, like at labbing in game. Like, because you're at a tournament right now. You don't have time to go to training mode. You don't got time to check the frame. You don't got time to, okay, I'm going to just right now adapt to the situation. That's something that's extremely tough to do. And it's something that has to be trained, I would say. That's not something that you can really you can't do that by just watching matches, I would say. Like you actually have to consciously practice that.
And I think that's where you start seeing like the weirder plays, like the stuff that defies logic come out more and more, like people who walk full screen and then you've seen those examples of like Daigo walking full screen and then throwing somebody, and it's like, how did you just cover so much space? 99% of the time you're watching Street Fighter, it's like in between buttons people are blocking or going for some other kind of space control move, but there's nothing on the screen and he's able to just walk the full screen. Adaptability, he understood the conditioning of that moment, right? And I kind of want to bring that back to the mechanical discussion we were just having about adaptability also. You mentioned like, how can you even play the mind game if you don't understand the mechanical options that are available in that situation, right? I think adaptability is also, recognizing when someone doesn't know what's going on in a situation.
That's true.
Right?
That's true.
Sometimes you try to play a respectful game. Like I think this is also what mid-level players get confused about high-level players. I talk about this a decent amount, where sometimes people feel like they play better against high-level players because they lose slower.
They like the way it looks. Yes, it feels.
The high-level player is playing them respectfully. Generally, the general high-level playstyle is generally more safe. There's exceptions to that rule. Some people have different, more wildly drastic play styles, right? But for the most part, Street Fighter V at the high level meta revolves around safe pressure, putting you in micro guessing situations without too much stake and kind of picking safer options until you start building up a read on the opponent. Then you might go for more dramatic reads to open them up as you get an understanding for their tendencies. When high level players play mid level players, they lose slower because they're not trying to go swing for the fences and go for that. But sometimes you start to recognize as you're playing more and more that, hey, I can win easier if I recognize that they don't understand certain situations or don't know how to deal with it, or their attention is over here and I'm going to attack them, I'm going to flank them from this side. But yeah, being able to recognize when people don't know the matchup or don't understand a certain situation and identifying that and going for it, it's choosing the path of the least resistance. Like, you got to be able to find that quick during a tournament set.